On this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Ray to talk a little bit more about how ShipHawk is identifying some areas to improve and create optimizations and automations with regards to tariffs, supply chain issues that may happen around the ports, the stress testing, very enlightening topics that you'll find out a little bit more about on this episode, as well as how to maybe even get more profit and reduce costs when talking about shipping, how to get more value from your customers, and maybe even to pocket a little bit more profit margin. So I think you're going to really like this particular episode. Hey, I think there's been some interesting things in the ecosystem with tariffs, and I do want to just thinking through some of this a little bit more and hear some of your thoughts and see what you're seeing on the ShipHawk side in the shipping space. I'm just want to pick your brain a little bit more about tariffs in general and what you see and how they're impacting the ecosystem.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, and thanks for that opening question. Really, with tariffs, everyone's talking about the tariffs and that there are tariffs. We've always, of course, had tariffs. Having spent 10 years in specifically imports and exports, I know all about tariffs. I had to apply for them on numerous shipments. The unique thing about our situation in tariffs today is what's happening after the tariffs. Labor market shifts, logistics market shifts, and specifically robotics and AI. I think we're entering what I would call the robotic age in logistics.
Interesting. You know, it's funny that you say that. I mean, the quick tangent is I just had a robotic lawnmower delivered today that I'm about to set up. So I can totally see that myself just from some of the practical things. And even from a logistics standpoint, I do see that as well. My background was in engineering and I loved robotics. I thought it was so fun. And I see that being the case in operations and expanding further, not just the manufacturing and some of the products and offerings, but into the logistics side. Can you tell me what you mean by logistics and automation and robotics on logistics specifically? Because I understand manufacturing and some robotics in like the home, right? But what do you mean by logistics?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at ShipHawk, the dominating part of our conversations these days are absolutely around asset control, but the question always comes up on WMS systems and installations. How do you integrate with robotics? And there's two different types. There's the warehouses that we're hearing about, dark warehousing, and just in case folks aren't familiar with that, a dark warehouse is fully automated. It operates with very little or no human involvement, and it relies on robotics, automation, smart technology to handle all the warehouse operations. Receiving, storing, ordering, processing, picking, shipping, everything is done robotically. But then you have these sort of human augment, we call them gray warehouses. They're not fully dark, but they're not fully analog, if you will. Humans are now analog in this scenario. They're not fully analog either. So in this case where you're doing a sort of augmentation of the person, I've seen systems where a person goes to a station and the robot is the warehouse. What do I mean by that? The shelves themselves move and come to the person. A light shows up and they grab their item and they put it on another cart, and that cart scurries over to the shipping area where it can have another person or it can be fully automated. There are so many unique things happening, and really Amazon's the linchpin here because they have a fund. I'm not sure if you are familiar with it. It's called the Industrial Innovation Fund, and they do $1 billion a year investment into AI and robotics at Amazon.
Those are all really interesting. I think one of the things that that gray area component sounds like it's more of a partial implementation of automation. And that to me sounds like the most natural next step from just a change management perspective. People will not have full confidence of full AI and automation in general with robotics. Plus, it's probably still evolving enough to not be able to rely 100% on it. So would you say that is probably the next step is just that blend between those two worlds?
I would fully agree with that. And really, that's what ShipHawk has been doing in enabling companies to do. It's that stepping stone that I've gone from basic WMS, it does what it needs to do, I get inventory, and it works fine, right? However, it's not robotics enabled. It's not enabled in such a way that you can implant automation at scale. Decision making, if this, do that. A lot of companies are calling that AI. It's not really, because it doesn't have any machine learning to it. However, at ShipHawk, we do have teach modes in certain systems. So I don't want to call it a full AI model. However, you are able to achieve much, much more automation within the ShipHawk tools, WMS, TMS. We have a lot of conversation around freight audit and cycle counting right now as well to do these automation tasks and really free up a lot of time in that.
So when you're talking about robotics and automations, you're not necessarily talking about physical robotics, like moving it in a robotic manner around the warehouse. You're talking about the logic for when you're receiving product in or shipping product out. That's more of the logic that you're talking about. Can you maybe give some examples?
Yeah, for sure. So the stepping stone in this case of ShipHawk taking you from non-robotics enabled to being able to employ robotics. What we would do in this example, let me think of a scenario. So here's a very common one. A container shows up, it's mixed pallet, mixed PO, bunch of purchase orders that you bringing in for all sorts of different things. And today, people are having to manually sort through that and look on the sheet and compare what they've received to make sure they've got everything. However, at ShipHawk, our system's smart enough to know what's on the ASN. So you're just going to scan everything and confirm it. Our system is going to crunch it and put everything and break it out into the POs where they belong and submit that information back. That process, what I just explained in 5 seconds or less, takes hours for companies to do today. ShipHawk automates that down to however long it takes you to receive it. 30 minutes.
Very interesting. So when you're saying when you're receiving that freight, you've got that container, and as probably people that have those freight containers receiving, they know that they're often paying by the hour or pretty close to that by just having it sit there. So they have to unload it, get it out quick, get the data, not only just unload it, but put it in the right spots in the warehouse. Otherwise, you're touching the same thing twice, and you can't put it in the right spots and make sure you log it as received to the right purchase order unless you can easily segment that out and have it split from that. When you're talking about multiple purchase orders, you've got multiple POs, you've got to mark them as received and what the quantity of what that amount is. And so let's say you've got 50 POs that exist here, splitting them out, making that whatever that receipt is that explains all the product in that, it can read it, identify which items and which quantity belong to what PO so you can reconcile it.
Yep, based on user input, and it will automatically do so you don't have to sit there and touch it twice. When you said about freight, but think about this other side of it, the administration side. You got to touch it 2 or 3 times on paper or in system. We want to eliminate that because that every time you touch something, it's like a toddler, right, in a museum. You don't want them touching any of the glass things, especially not twice. Something has the potential to break, and we want to eliminate all that decision making within the software.
Interesting. So that's on the WMS side, but what about on the shipping side that's on the receiving side, but what about on the shipping side? I'm curious about the opportunities for automation and maybe where money is falling through the cracks on a lot of operations. Because at this stage, if you're getting hit with tariffs, then you need to make sure that you're able to offset that, well, either by increasing pricing to the consumer or by cutting your costs in other areas with automation so that your overall cost to business in your operations is reduced so that you can keep lower prices. So what other things could exist to automate on the shipping side, shipping product out, to keep operation costs down or to get more money in general?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things we learned early on in business is supply and demand model. And if you look at the current import supply coming into the country, it's significantly reduced. So companies want to do a number of things with the assets they have now. One of those things is they want to control them better because the assets they have now are about to skyrocket in value. There's going to be a lot of demand for not a lot of product. The stuff that they have coming in is being routed to other countries. As an example, iPhones are still shipping. They're just not shipping to the US ports. It's 140% or whatever it is today to ship from China to the US, but it's only 25% to import that same good from Canada or Mexico into the US. So we're effectively shipping our port jobs out to other countries through these tariffs, and thus increasing price of the goods that we have on hand now through the supply and demand model that we all know and trust. Two of the major conversations that ShipHawk's having today is around control of assets, so cycle counting in the warehouse, and on the ship outside, Caleb, it's making sure that the right products are going to the right people, because we surely do not want to have an accident at that stage. So companies were looking at that before and going 4%, 3% misship rate, that's okay. But now today, they want that down, way down. As an example, at ShipHawk, we're bringing that below 1%. So that's a acceptable range for today's market, which in previous markets was just phenomenal. And now it's the standard. So that's how tariffs is really shaping and changing the market as we know it, and where automation and configurations are really finding their home is in that side of it.
You mentioned the supply and demand just a second ago when you said that the ports are shifting around, and I just didn't connect the dots on this for a moment until just now, that instead of shipping it from China to the US port directly, you're shipping it to Canada, and then Canada is shipping it to us and kind of routing it through that, because its overall cost increases the total time to get to your warehouse. So as a result, the existing inventory that you have in your warehouse has a higher demand. Is that what you're trying to refer to?
Exactly. Much higher demand and the ability to replenish that. Those models don't exist. The model before, if, as an example, you're shipping to the West Coast ports, Seattle, Long Beach, LA, those are the big ones. If any of those ports were slowed or shut down for whatever reason, we've seen port strikes in the past, what would we do as an importer? I would simply go to Houston. I would go to Miami. I would go to Washington. I would go elsewhere. But not now, because it's a tariff. The tariffs are impacting the whole of the US, 140 some odd percent, unless that's changed. When I woke up this morning, who knows, right? But that same good I can ship into Vancouver, and I can bring it down the border, not much further from Seattle. It's only a 25% tariff. So we're bringing stuff in, but through channels that have not been stress tested to this degree before. If everybody starts using Vancouver, that was using LA and was using Seattle, that is going to stress, or even Tacoma, that's going to stress that port significantly, and that border is going to get backed up significantly. There will be a delay. There will be a supply and demand issue. It's just a matter of time.
That's really interesting to have that supply demand. I'm really connecting the dots there for how it's going to stress those supply chains and running through the ports and getting them backed up, because these are new ports that are going to get stress tested with this additional volume that they probably haven't been able to handle. And if you got more volume, you probably can't scale enough to handle pushing that product through fast enough. So all that product you got in your warehouse is more valuable because you're not going to be able to replenish that stock fast enough. And we're coming into a season that people are going to be starting to probably start ordering, creating purchase orders for additional product for even the Christmas season this far out, depending on if you're needing to order from a manufacturing facility. There can be a delay. And so you're planning your existing product, your existing demand, plus this future, trying to decide if you should even switch manufacturers to make it easier. And it's a lot going on right now. And then on the WMS side, what type of value does that cycle counting actually provide? Like I'm talking about this supply demand, and we know that what we have now is going to have high demand, that existing product in the warehouse. What will that cycle counting do and help solve that issue?
It's exactly what you said a moment ago. Knowing that I have goods in my warehouse that I don't know if or when I'm going to be able to replenish them. And so everything I have now, I really want to make sure I've got tight control. I know exact quantities, I know exact locations, so I don't have to worry so much. I am going to worry, but maybe not so much about that next shipment coming in and it taking an additional 3-4 weeks to get in. I'm going to know that I have control of those assets. I can trust what's in my warehouse so that I can deliver a customer experience that my customer can trust. Critical to this really uncertain time, we don't want our customer to lose faith in our ability to deliver those products in a timely and an effective manner. Because otherwise, today you can go anywhere else that you want and buy something else. You go on TikTok shop and find the same thing, maybe even cheaper. So that customer relationship is so important. We're enabling our customers to maintain those strong relationships through trust of product, trust of being able to deliver on product.
So you've got the cycle counting that is making sure you have enough product for this increased demand, especially when there's a lull in the supply chain. And then from there, you can do demand planning so that you can know what is the delta that you're going to have to deal with. And one probably unique nuance here on the demand plan is going to be that you've got the markets are going to shift a lot. It might make sense to order more product if you're able to react faster than your competitors, because your competitors are going to be off and their supply chain might be thrown off and they might not have the product. And so some of your competitors' customers may have to route to you instead to see if you've got any availability. So I could see there being some people that could take advantage by just getting more product faster and maybe even ordering a little bit more in this when there's a backed up in the supply chain.
Yeah, over ordering, I think, is going to be a critical piece to success for those who have that sort of sustainable product that you're going to be like golf, sporting goods. People are still going to be doing that stuff. Other things that are kind of maybe ancillary to that, like the biking industry through COVID. If you guys are familiar with this, biking industry saw a huge boom during COVID and their POs skyrocketed, but there was no inventory for that. They were taking orders in advance, ordering the stuff, but because it took so long to come in, cancellations exploded months later. Suddenly that $1,000 bike that you bought 6 months ago that you still don't have wasn't as important anymore. So they saw a huge amount of cancellations and orders, but have already purchased the inventory. Many giant biking companies went upside down and eventually closed their doors. So depending on the product line that you have, this could be a benefit, but it could also be a very challenging time to predict that, which is why cycle counting is important. It's why getting stuff out the door accurately and timely is important. Auditing your bills is important. Having an ERP is very important.
What about on being able to make sure that you're increasing profit margins from your shipping rates? I want to circle back to shipping rates for a second. If I were to ship something, maybe a customer selected a specific delivery method, 2-day shipping, and it ended up getting delivered in 5 days. Walk me through that process. Does the shipping provider have to cover any delta because they didn't hit their end of the arrangement? What happens in that scenario?
What usually happens is you don't know it's happened and you've paid for 2-day shipping and you didn't get 2-day shipping, and your customer's probably not said anything just yet, because by the time they do, they got the product and you've paid full price for half a pizza, right? With ShipHawk, we have a freight audit tool, and we're going to capture that. You only have a small window in order to submit a claim for those errors that do happen, and they happen far more frequently than people realize. And what we do is ensure that we automatically recover those costs in a timely manner so that you can then reinvest that, which, of course, among rising costs, reinvesting what you already have available to you is super important. So with ShipHawk's freight audit tool, we have an automated recovery. We have a dashboard that's going to show you and highlight all the errant shipments, and it's using those SLAs. Hey, what did we buy? What is the carrier supposed to be doing for us based on our contracted rates and terms and SLAs and all that such? But yeah, most of the time, unfortunately, Caleb, people don't catch it because they're having to do it manually, if they even do it at all. Some folks, unfortunately, most folks don't do it at all.
So that's another area of recovering some extra money and getting some extra revenue in back to your company to offset some of the costs. So that's one of them. And then what about on just ship rate and doing shopping of shipping rates?
So this is where the rubber meets the road on customer experience. Some sites don't have the ability to ship bulk goods LTL and push that rate into their website, so the customer can't see this big shipment is going this way. Here's the SLA, these kinds of things. There are the other experience where maybe we're more used to, I'm going to go online and I'm buying some AirPods and I know it's going to be free shipping or what have you. That's fine too. ShipHawk has rules enabled. We have two different types of rules. There's rating rules and shipment policies. Rating rules are basically, what do I want to charge? What's it going to cost them? Do I want to do a markup for this area or that area because I know it's challenging or whatever? It's taking all the knowledge you have of your shipping lanes and putting it into the product so we can deliver a customer experience accurately every single time through rules. And that's kind of where that AI takes over. It's not really AI. It is a if this, do that. More like a business rule than anything.
So how could somebody try and make more profit through having these shipping methods and be able to have these rules? Like what will it do other than customer experience? I get that you can have some rules, but how does it actually impact making more profit on a particular sale?
Yeah, so in this case of if you're looking to profit off of shipping, the most common thing to do is a percent markup, general across the board. Every shipment, 2% markup, shipping rate, that's what the customer's paying. Other rules are if it's going to this part of the country, add an additional handling fee of some sort. So there's different rules you can say, mark it up by this percent, or I can put a dollar amount, things like that.
What about carrier shopping? Maybe I have some sweet commerce and big commerce customers that use ShipHawk, and when I was working on some other extensions and functionality, I was playing around with the ShipHawk functionality too. And one thing I observed that was interesting was being able to offer things as a shipping method, not be too specific, but just say 2-day, 1-day, different types of methods, but not talk about the carrier specifically. And from what I observed, it looks like then on the back end in NetSuite and on the ERP, then it could be decided what is going to be the cheapest and then pocket the difference. Is that something that that you see as, in addition to that marking up of that 2% in general, what about shopping around and capturing that difference?
Yeah, masked carrier rates is what we call that, where we're just saying good, better, best, usually is what most folks are doing. And in the background, that enables you to choose whichever one that you want based on, what's cheapest and number of days is the most common. So then the customer may be paying $15, but it could only cost you $5 to ship it. And they don't know which carrier it's going to be on. They just chose good.
Got it. So they chose 2-day shipping. There are 3 different carrier options. Then the person shipping the product can pocket the difference of the $10 there and increase their margin, in addition to the fact that they marked up by 2%. And then from there, let's say that it doesn't deliver in 2 days and it delivered in 5 days, then you get it again where you can capture with that freight that audit, the freight audit, to capture that commitment that the carrier was supposed to commit to. They didn't deliver in that, and they have to basically refund that difference that from their commitment. So you're able to capture it in 3 different areas on the shipping.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Hmm. I've never really broken it down to this level, and it's pretty interesting to me because what we've been able to do now is we talked about the WMS side and being able to think about how you can capture in these containers the supply and demand and the impacts of tariffs and the stress testing on the supply chain and why it's so important to have a strong WMS in place and within your NetSuite environment and this ERP ecosystem so that you can get the proper demand plan and order the right amount because of the supply chain getting tested. And then on the shipping side, then there's 3 areas of value that you're getting, which is being able to mark up and create rules to mark up the shipping by, let's say, 2%, pocket the difference of rate carrier and the shopping, and then finally on the back end, if they fail to deliver, the carrier fails to deliver shipping of the product in that 2-day time frame, then you get the difference in what the shipping cost would have been. So many areas to save on both the receiving, warehouse management, as well as the shipping of the product.
Yeah,
Did I
exactly.
summarize that okay?
And that's
Okay. Good. Well, thanks for going through all of these. I actually learned a lot. I knew of some of these things before, but I definitely did not understand the impact of tariffs on the supply chain and how you can strategically navigate that. And it was really enlightening to see some of these things that I had never thought about. So thanks for going through them.
Absolutely.
Well, if anybody wants to find out more about ShipHawk, they can reach out to Ray or ShipHawk directly, learn more about the solutions if it makes sense. Really, ultimately, right, it comes down to an ROI. Can you justify, is there an ROI there? And a lot of times there is. And I know that they'll be able to break it down for you a little bit more. And I've had many successful customers that have really liked the solution too. So thanks, Ray. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.